Hey everybody, this is Storyboards, and this is a storyboard interview. Our writing contest has come to a close, and we want to thank everybody for participating. This is our winner for our high school division. They had an amazing story about a man and his grandfather going fishing together, and this winner has actually decided that she doesn't want to come to the event for her own personal reasons. And so, for this interview, I sent them questions, and her father read them out loud to her, and she answered the questions. So, we'll go to the interview, and then her story followed straight after.
Tell us about yourself. Where are you from? What's your main hobby if it's not writing?
My name is Penny Duran, and I was originally born in Houston, Texas. Alongside writing, another hobby of mine is ballet, and I've been dancing for nearly 14 years. I also enjoy drawing quite a bit, and I'm an avid reader.
What was your inspiration for this story?
My name is Penelope, my full name, which comes from Greek and means the weavers, so fittingly to my name, I wove in a lot of different elements from my life and experiences into the story, and there's not one single thing that inspired it, but a variety of things, and one element of my life that contributed to the story is that my maternal grandfather used to fish a lot, and when I was little, I always wanted to also learn to fish. Another element I wove into the story is Peter Pan, which used to be my favorite movie when I was really little. And I've also been studying German since I was very little, and so that's what contributes to Opeth's German heritage, because Germany has had a really big impact on my life. And then lastly, my other grandfather has been sick for some years, so that's what contributes to that aspect of the story.
Do you plan on continuing your writing and become a published author?
Well, I've been writing for nearly 3 years now, and I've been entering writing contests for nearly 3 years. And I would love to become a published author one day and be able to see my book at a bookstore. But I still think I have a lot of growth left, and I don't really want to rush it. I want to wait till the time is right and the story is right.
May we read your story in the podcast?
Yes, of course you can read my story in the podcast.
Gone Fishing by Penny Duran. The day was sunny and allowed his memories to flourish. His calloused hands brushed against the corrugated door as he walked out of the old tool shed with fishing rod and tackle box in hand. As he wiped the sweat off his face with his mud-stained sleeve, he dashed into the plain one-story house and came back out with a cooler. He stowed his supplies in the back of the aged red truck parked out front, its vanity plate glittering in the sun, even though some of the paint had worn away from the letters. Getting in the truck, he focused only on the small wiry road in front of him, which had become so familiar over the years. When he arrived at the lake, he unloaded his gear onto the dock and sat down under the canopy of trees. Some of the recent rain remained on their branches and gently drifted down onto his thinning hair. He looked at the miniature reflecting pools and was reminded of how he and Opa, his grandfather, used to fish in the rain. As his fishing line sunk into the shimmering waters, his mind drifted to the past. He allowed his thoughts to swim as deep as they could, back to the old tales of magic fish, about which his Opa used to tell. "Why do people fish for fun if they can get fish from the store?" he asked when he was a little too young to understand these sort of pastimes. He simply wanted to spend all day outdoors, playing. "Magic," Opa said with absolute certainty. "Magic?" he asked, confusion painted all across his face. "Haven't heard of magic fish?" Opa asked, the accent of his home country becoming more prominent as he prepared to tell a story. His grandson shook his head in reply. "People say that there are magic fish in this lake, and if you find one, you can wish for anything," Opa said confidently. "Anything?" he asked in doubting confirmation. "Yes, anything. Happiness, success, Geld." His grandson smiled, not only at the idea that there was magic in the lake, but also at the way Opa would use the German word whenever he couldn't instantly remember the English one. The lake did not try to hide its enchantment, revealing it through the gentle breezes which spoke to them. They spent hours in the sun, in search for magic, until their skin was the color of salmon. They would have to go back to the house to fetch sunscreen and aloe vera later. They discussed what they would wish for when they caught a magic fish. When he had asked Opa, he could see the desperate longing in his grandfather's eyes. Opa said he had everything he needed. When Opa asked his grandson what he wanted, the boy quickly replied without hesitation, "I don't ever want to grow up. I want days like today forever."
"Oh, mein Lieber, I want that too. But most things don't last forever,"
said Opa. "Then I'd wish to be like you when I grow up." Opa smiled. They both dipped their feet into the water. Opa taught him how to fish. He heard a tree branch drop into the water and was shaken back to the present from his memories. The sun and the blanket of humidity were making his mind sluggish and tired. He got up, opened the cooler, and pulled out a can of soda. He was about to take a sip before he paused and checked the label on the back of the can. Oma had packed their lunches for their little outing with absolute care. Opa insisted on an inventory to ensure she had made no grave mistake. As he was packing their supplies, he asked for his grandson to check the cooler.
"Come here, mein Lieber,"
Opa said as he moved some bait into a smaller bucket. "Yes, Opa?" his grandson responded.
"Open up the cooler and check if the soda pop has good old cane sugar,"
he bellowed. His grandson hurried to the cooler and came back with a can. "And?" Opa asked expectantly. "No cane sugar, just syrup," he answered.
"Well, we have no need for that,"
Opa said.
"We'll have to remind Oma that proper provisions include soda with cane sugar and not syrup."
"What's wrong with syrup? And what's so great about cane sugar?" he asked.
"That's hard to explain in words, but the taste tells the truth,"
Opa said with a twinkle in his eyes. He looked at the can, satisfied, and drank its entire contents in one long, wistful gulp. He considered leaping into the water, just like he had as a boy, while Opa watched. He put the thought aside, remembering he didn't have a swimsuit with him. The sun's rays appeared to be dancing across the water, twinkling brighter than the stars would in the sky. With the sapphire waters and the light breezes that rustled through the emerald trees, he felt as if this were his own little world, a world where only magic and bliss existed. That summer, he stayed longer at his grandparents' house than usual, which was odd since school was starting in less than a week. One night, the humidity kept him up till twilight, and just as he was about to take sleep's hand, it was torn away from him by his grandmother's voice downstairs. "How much time does he have left?" he heard Oma's voice ask. The words were at first alien and incomprehensible. Then he heard his grandmother's broken voice say to the person at the other end of the phone line, Oh, okay. That's not much. No, my apologies. It's not your fault. Opa's pancreatic. You've done all you could. Yes, we'll be there for another appointment. On Saturday. He had tried to stay hidden, but Alma spotted him as soon as she turned in his direction. Earl, what are you doing? You are supposed to be in bed. Alma trembled, shimmying on his feet and hesitant to speak. Earl paused before asking, What's wrong with Opa? Nothing, Alma insisted with tears in her eyes. Earl was confused and tried to reach some kind of understanding. Pancreatic? A strange word. What was that? He turned it over in his mind. Is Opa taking me to see Peter Pan? Earl asked. Alma, tears welling in her eyes, answered, No, but he still wants to take you somewhere. No, to give you something. What? Asked the excited boy. Alma started. Mem. Earl stared at the water from his perch on the pier. His fishing trip had been a success. He wondered if it would have been more bountiful with a boat. He recalled his grandfather's boat, Lillian. The funeral had followed some time later, and there was no coffin, only his boat. As Lillian was lowered into the ground, Earl couldn't help but think that it was kind of funny to be buried in a boat. In a way, it made sense, but Earl didn't like to dwell on that moment too much. Sitting there, he turned over an all-too-familiar deck of playing cards in his hands, and was reminded of his favorite child game. He gazed back to the old red pickup truck and its weathered license plate, Go Fish. He smiled and grabbed the fishing pole a little bit tighter. As he settled back into the fishing position, a passing stranger took a pause from his jog. Fishing? The stranger asked. Yep, Earl said proudly, producing a bare fishing line from the water. The stranger was at first left speechless, but then said, You're not going to catch anything like that. What do you expect to catch? Earl smiled, tipped his hat, and said deliberately, Memories.